Trial balance.
Welcome back. Good morning, afternoon, and evening, depending on the time you're actually listening to this video. My name is Effie, and I'm an educator in accounting basics. So today is actually our second topic. Okay, so today is actually a great day. First, let me say that today is a great day, and our second topic is about trial balance. And whenever students hear of trial balance, the first thing that they think, I think their hearts begins to beat, because sometimes your trial balance, when you have actually finished doing your ledger and you have to extract a trial balance, it does not actually balance. Sometimes, so I'm not saying all the time, sometimes. So sometimes students, whenever they hear something like trial balance or balance sheets, they actually tend to be very, very sad. But anyways, trial balance is a very, very easy topic by the grace of God, because nothing is easy without him. Anyway, trial balance. Trial balance, as the name implies, balance refers to a statement of testing the arithmetical accuracy of the ledger entries being extracted. So whenever they tell you to extract a ledger entry, for example, like in our last class, I explained about the ledger, about somebody giving another person 50,000 naira. So when we prepare that ledger, so that balance brought it down that we get, that's going to be used or extracted into the word trial balance. We're going to use it to extract a trial balance. So that's just what trial balance is about. Everything you get from the ledger, you extract it and move it towards the trial balance and make sure it's balanced. It has to balance. That's just what you have to bear in mind, because as the name states, as the name implies, balance. When you hear balance, the weight in the right hand and the weight in the left hand has to be the same what do they call it? It just has to be the same weight in general. So don't mind me, I can be used to accounting terms sometimes. So actually balance just means it has to be the same, carry the same weight in both sides. You get? So debit side, if you calculate everything in debit side and it's 20 million, that has to be the exact thing in the work credit side. So now, simply put, a trial balance refers to a statement prepared to make sure the debit and credit side of accounts in total are the same. I've already explained that. Notes: whenever there is an increase in any item, it means that there also will be a decrease in the other item. Let me explain. So if there is an increase in an item, let's say they say, like I said, if I say I give you this cash, so as there's an increase, there's a credit item, right? There must also be a debit item. That's what this is just trying to state. So there should not be two credit items or two debit items. There must be a debit item and a credit item. So there must be an increase in one item and a decrease in another item. For example, when there is a purchase of goods for 7 million naira cash, I don't know, I just love millions of naira, God please. It means that since purchase is a debit item, that is receiver, cash must be the giver. It is stated in trial balance below: purchase debited, cash credited. The balance sheet is what? 7 million naira. Let me just state, this is not how trial balance will be this easy. Trial balance will have, like, let me say, close to like 20 or 15, 20, 30 items, and you have to make sure it's balanced. So it's not that you just see only this and you feel that, okay, yes, I've balanced my account, but I have to start small before we understand the big ones. You understand? So that's what trial balance is about. But there's something I actually want to state. There's something I would love to explain and state. So whenever an item is being recorded, or sorry, a transaction is being given to us, leave cash first. If, for example, say that good has been, okay, there has been a purchase of stationery, cash. In your mind, everything cash is supposed to be debited, right? Yes, because it's an asset. I think I'll move. Our next class will be teaching you or be treating the things that will be debited and the things that will be credited. But before I actually go to that, whenever a transaction is given, cash should be the last thing you should think about identifying. You know, I told us in our first class or in our second class, I said we should first of all identify the receivers and the givers. So sometimes cash can be a credit item, cash can be a debit item, but at the end of the day, it must have a debit balance. So when we're moving it to the trial balance, it must have a debit balance. Do you understand? I'll actually also explain that in our next class. But what I'm just trying to say is that whenever a transaction is given, the first thing you should actually put in mind or to identify is the item that is not cash. If they, for example, here they say, well, purchase goods for 7 million naira cash, just leave cash first. Think of the purchase. Is purchase a debit or credit item? Purchase is a debit item. So you are going to debit it, and the other one will be credited, which is cash. So if, for example, this is sales, sales is a credit item. So that means cash should be debited, sales will be credited. Do we understand? So the last thing we should think of is cash. The first thing should be that other item. And same as bank, cash and bank is like the same thing. So if they say that there is a purchase of goods for 7 million naira bank, you should leave bank first. Actually understand whether purchase is to be credited or debited. Do we understand? So that's everything we have to know here about trial balance. But I think there will be a continuation on trial balance in our next class. So now the continuation in our trial balance class, we'll be talking about errors. You know, in our second class, I talked about errors. That's the error of reversal of entries. So here in this class, we're going to actually be explaining it more. So continuation, while preparing trial balance, sometimes it may not always balance, which is an error. There are, however, two types of errors. We have errors that affect the trial balance, like I stated earlier, and errors that do not affect the trial balance. So errors that affect the trial balance. We have errors of addition, errors of subtraction, and error of one-side reversal of entries. So now errors of addition. Let's say, for example, these are the errors that affect the trial balance, like I stated. So let's say, for example, you were to maybe you were calculating, you were using your calculator to calculate something that's supposed to put 20,000, you went to put 2,000, and at the end of the day, you are saying that the amount that you're actually supposed to get is shorter than the other. Like the credit side is shorter than the debit side because of addition problem. So that error will affect the trial balance. Do you understand? Let's say when we are preparing a cash book now, all these things I'm just giving like a what's it called? This is like kind of the essay part I'm explaining to you. I think our next class or next two class I'll be explaining about like writing and also creating and exporting of accounts. Do you understand? So now, like I stated, error of addition. Let's say you're supposed to add everything here in the credit side of a cash book, and when you added it, you got 20,000, which is supposed to be, let me say, 27,000, and you put that 20,000. By the time you put that 20,000, it's going to affect it. Why? Because by the time you move it to a trial balance, it will not balance because it's shorter. Or it's shorter. Do you understand? So error of subtraction is like error of addition, but here is what's minus. So now error of one side reversal of entries. This is what I was trying to explain. So for example, let's say that you're supposed to debit. Okay, let me use this. Let's say this, for example, now this particular particulars that purchases here is debited, cash is credited, right? So let's say that purchases, instead for you to debit purchases now, you go and credit it, right? That means there's a reversal of entry. That's the debit side, you are now putting it in credit side. So this 7 million naira, instead for you to debit it, that is here, right? You want to go and put it here, and this cash that is here, instead for it, as you're supposed to credit it, you now credit it. So that means you're going to be having nothing in the debit side, and you're going to be having 14 million, right, in the credit side, and that's going to make the trial balance more balanced. So that's what error of one side reversal of entries. So that's how it's going to affect the trial balance. So now, for example, now B, errors that do not affect the trial balance. We have error of omission. Error of omission. Whenever you hear omission, you feel what comes to your mind? That the thing does not actually take place at all, right? It has been omitted. So if, for example, there's a transaction that says sales and cash, and that entire transaction, that sales was not recorded, cash was not recorded, it's not going to what make the trial balance to be affected. Trial balance will still balance because you just like you do not even do that account at all. Do you get? So let's say that, for example, you're supposed to debit an item and credit the item of those amounts, but you did not even treat it at all. It's not going to what make the trial balance not balance. Does that even make sense? Yes, it does. The second one is an error of commission. This is names. Whenever I hear commission, you think of what? Names. So if they say, for example, Mr. Bola and Mr. Baba are in a business. So Mr. Bola is to give Mr. Bala this particular money. Okay, no, let me state it like this. Let's say Mr. Bala is to be debited with so amount, right? Instead for you to debit Mr. Bala, you are debiting Mr. Baba. The trial balance will still balance because what you are still going to debit the person, whether it's Mr. Baba or Mr. Bala. Do you understand? So if, for example, you're supposed to debit Mr. Baba, you get you're supposed to what debit, this is what credit. You're supposed to be debiting, and let's say this is particulars. So you're supposed to, let's say this is the particular. Supposed to debit Mr. Baba with 2,000. Go and credit. I'm sorry, you go and debit Mr. Baba, but it will still be in the debit side, right? So because it's in the debit side, the trial balance will balance. Because now I'm not even talking about names, we're talking about the accounts. So because as far as it's still in the debit side, it's going towards balance. So the next one is an error of principle. Error of principle deals with names of different kinds of accounts. So let's say that there is an expense account and there's a assets account. Expense and assets, they're supposed to be debited. In our next class or in our classes to come, I'll actually state the items that should be debited and credited so you can understand this more. So expenses is to be debited. Assets is also to be debited. So if, for example, you say okay, you are supposed to debit motor expense account, I went to go and debit motor van account. Motor expense is an expense account, motor van is an assets account, but because you still debit that particular account with the same figure, it will still balance. So that's why it will not affect the trial balance from balancing. Do you understand? Next one, error of complete reversal. The first one I stated using this illustration was error of partial reversal, and I said if it's error of partial, if it's error of partial reversal. For example, if here it's supposed to be 7 million and you put 7 million here will not be 7 million, making here 14 million, here making here was 0. But if it's error of complete reversal, it means that this one that's supposed to be debited is credited, this one that's supposed to be credited is debited. So by the time you are debiting the one that's supposed to be credited and crediting the one that is supposed to be debited, both of them will still have the 7 million, right? And that's how it's going to be it's going to balance. Do you understand? So the last one is error of original entry. Error of original entry. This error is the error that of original entry means the original value is incorrect or the original amount is incorrect. For example, they say that okay, you have to debit Bola's account with 20,000 naira, and you're going to credit cash with 20,000 naira, but maybe you forgot the figure, you want to go and put 10,000 and 10,000. As far as you put 10,000 and 10,000 in both the credit and debit side, it's going to balance. Do you understand? So that original figure, in as much as it's incorrect, but as far as you both put it in the debit and credit side, it's going to balance. Do you understand? So now I said notes, errors that affect the agreement of the trial balance should be avoided. I'm talking about all these errors that affect the trial balance from agreeing. That's error of addition. Whenever you're calculating, you should make sure that you add well. Error of subtraction rather. When you are trying to subtract the credit from the debit or the debit from the credit, you should make sure you are doing it well. Error of one-side reversal of entry. You should make sure that this is avoided because you cannot just have two particular accounts like the illustration I made. You cannot just have 7 million and 7 million in debit and credit side. It will be 14 million and in the so you cannot just have 7 million and 7 million in the credit side alone and the debit side is not. So like I stated, the 14 million naira now, when you calculate it, because you have 7 million naira in the credit side and you have nothing in debit side. So we have to calculate and make sure, like the first one, addition, we should make sure that okay, the addition is right. The subtraction, we should make sure that we subtract right. And the third one, we should make sure that we don't move errors, or we don't reverse account, or we don't reverse transactions. That is, we don't put the debit one on the credit side, and we don't put the credit one on the debit side. So we should avoid these errors that would affect the trial balance. So this is the continuation on what trial balance, and in this continuation we're going to be treating an illustration on trial balance. Illustration 1. Banco and Joel entered into a production business of manufacturing shoes. Below are their particulars: cash in hand 5,000 naira, properties 10,000 naira, return outward 10,000 naira, return inwards 3,000 naira, sales 25,000 naira, rent and rates 2,000 naira, general expenses 5,000 naira, purchases 15,000 naira, bank 10,000 naira, creditors 5,000 naira, loan 10,000 naira, bills payable 8,000 naira, wages and salaries 4,000 naira, bills receivable 15,000 naira, debtors 15,000 naira, depreciation 6,000 naira, cost of sales 10,000 naira, capital 42,000 naira. Required: you as a student of Accounting Mobile Academy are required to prepare a trial balance as at what, January 2026. Okay, there is one thing I want to state before we actually start preparing this. All these things that I'm writing here, you will not see it in exam, or most at times actually you will not actually see it in exam. You will not see debit. They will not be telling you what to do: credit, debit, credit. They will just give you, for example, cash in hand. They'll just give you and give you the amount. Not say prepare trial balance. Do you understand? So I'm just writing this because you are still trying to understand. The next illustration I'm going to do, I'm not going to write all this debit, credit. Do you understand? So now I'm going to prepare the trial balance for Banco and Joel Enterprises. So for the continuation of this, I already drill how our trial balance is going to look like. So anytime they tell us to prepare a trial balance, anytime they tell us what to prepare, and they give us maybe a trial balance to extract and prepare, the first thing we should actually think of doing is to prepare it in a format like this. I already divided this into two because of space. So now we have our particulars, debit and credit, and we have our our naira sign. This is very, very important. But in some cases that it may be Ghana cedis, or it may be dollar, any currency it is they give you, that should be represented. But here it's because I'm using naira, so that's why I represented it with naira. And if you also note here, I put 3 zeros here and put 1,000. So that means they're telling us to prepare a or extract a trial balance concerning what, millions of naira, not thousands. Do we understand? I just put these 3 zeros here, but I think when I'm going to be stating it, maybe I'll be putting it in full. So now I'm going to be extracting and be putting all our items here on the debit or credit side. So the first one is what, cash in hand. Cash in hand is a debit balance. Cash in hand must have a debit balance. So that's what we're going to be doing first. We have cash in hand is debited with what? It's debited with 5,000 naira, or let me say 5 million naira. So I'm going to put it here. You can put 5 million. The next thing is what? Properties. Properties also has a debit balance with what? 10 million naira. So I'm going to write properties. We have 10 million. The next one is what? Return outward. Return outward is what? Credited with what? 10,000 or 10 million naira. So we're going to write what? Return outward. Return outward is what? Credited, right? 10 million naira. And then return inwards is debited with 3 million naira. So that we're going to do here. Return inward 3 million naira. Then we have sales. Sales is credited with 25 million naira. So we're going to credit sales. Sales 25 million naira. Next one is what? Rent and rate is what is debited, because rent and rate is what's an expense with what 2 million naira. So we have rent and rate. That's what 2 million naira. General expenses is what is debited with what 5 million naira. So I'm going to write general expenses, what 5 million. Purchases is 50 million naira and is debit. It must always have a word debit balance, so we're going to write 50 million naira on the debit side. So write purchases 15 million naira. Then bank is just like cash, it's an asset, so it's going to be debited with what 10 million naira. So we're going to write bank 10 million naira. Creditors is credited with 5 million naira, so we're going to write creditors 5 million naira. Okay, sorry, this one's supposed to be here. Loan is credited with 10 million naira, so we're going to write loan 10 million naira. Bills payable 8 million naira is credit. Bills payable 8 million naira. Wages and salaries is debited with 4 million naira, so we're going to write wages and salaries is debited with what 4 million naira, so we're going to write 4 million naira. Bills receivables debited with what 50 million naira, so bills receivable 15 million naira. Debtors 15 million naira is also debited. Debtors 15 million naira. Depreciation 6 million naira. Depreciation, you can just write dep, or let me just do it in full. Depreciation is what 6 million naira. Cost of sales 10 million naira. Capital 42 million naira. So you can write cost of sales 10 million. Cost of sales, is it debit or credit? It's debit, yes, 10 million naira. And capital is credit with 42 million naira. So now these are all what we are to prepare. Put the debit on the debit, the credit on the credit. So now what we are going to do next is to calculate all the debit side and calculate all the credit side. Our main goal is to make sure that what the debit is equal to what the credit side. So that's actually the main idea of trial balance. So we have to calculate the debit side and make sure the debit and credit side correspond. Do we understand? So now I'm going to be using my calculator, and before, okay, let me just do it first, then we'll calculate the debit side first, we'll keep it somewhere, then we'll calculate the credit side also. So the first one that I see is 5 million. We can just write 5,000 because all the zeros are like the same, so we don't need to start stressing ourselves. So the first one was 5,000 plus 10,000 plus 3,000 plus 2,000 plus 5,000 plus 15,000 plus 10,000 plus Debit side is what, 4 million, right? That's 4,000 plus 15,000 plus 15,000 plus 6,000 plus 10,000 equals to, what are we getting? We are getting 98,000 words 200 naira. So we're just going to put it here, debit, because we're not sure yet. You have to calculate at least 2 times or even more. 98,200. So now we have to calculate the credit side and make sure that it's either this figure, and if it's not this figure, we have to calculate the debit side again and also calculate the credit side again. So for the credit side, we have to, the first one was 10,000 plus 25,000 plus 50,000 plus 10,000 plus 8,000 plus 42,000. We're getting what, 245,000. So we'll keep it down to 145,000. So is it the same? No, it's not the same. This is lower than this, and they have to be the same, right? So now the reason I did this, and I'm not going to edit this part of the video, the reason, and you can see, it's not that I was making sure I'm incorrect. The reason that sometimes this happen, and this is actually something that maybe some students fail to do, maybe they just calculate it once and they're like, okay, my trial balance does not balance, it does not balance. So calculating more than once, if possible twice or even 3 times, it's even better. Do we understand? So anybody can actually make mistakes, but we accountants, we should be very, 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 very sure about our figures, because we are the one that will be telling people what we have obtained. Do we understand? So whenever you are giving an account to prepare, you should actually make sure and be sure of the figures before you actually write it down. Do you understand? So this method I did, right, this method I did by saying that, okay, let us calculate it first more than once or twice or 3 times, that's one method you can use. Another method again that you can actually use is by what, when you calculate it first, if you see your calculator, you can see like there's a replay that you can go back to see what you calculated. Do you understand? I actually advise most of the students I actually teach, I advise them that they should actually do the second one, because most at times we don't really have time. Do you get? We don't really have time to actually say, okay, let's try and calculate again or calculate again, right? So most at times that's just the situation we are faced with. So we have to actually make sure that the figures are very correct. So instead of you calculating and calculating and calculating and calculating again, we have to actually be sure and also do what, try and press that replay button, because when you press it, you can actually know, oh, I calculated this twice, oh, I put an extra 0, oh, I forgot to put a 0. Do you get? So now we're going to be doing calculating again and also using that method to be sure of what we did. So the first one was 5,000 plus 10,000 plus 3,000 plus 2,000 plus 5,000 plus 15,000 plus 10,000 plus 4,000 plus 15,000 plus 15,000 plus 6,000 plus 10,000. So what did we get? We got was 91,000, right? So now instead of us calculating again, let's just go back and actually see where we made mistakes. So now the first one, 5,000, is it correct? Yes. 10,000, is it correct? No, this is not correct. So now we can just place that our replace button to go to the place that, because we're supposed to put 10,000, and what did I put there? Put what, 1,000 naira there, right? Yes, I put 1,000, so I can just add an extra 0. So by the time I'm adding 0, we have to be adding plus. I think there's another way for that, but in the one I really understand, you have to put your plus back and you'll be putting different figures. Let's plus 3,000 plus 2,000 plus 5,000 plus 15,000 plus 10,000 plus 4,000, is it 4? Yeah, plus 15,000 plus 15,000 plus 6,000 and plus what, 10,000. What did we get? 100,000, right? So now we have to go back again to make sure that what we did is correct, and let's try and see it. So the first one, 5,000, correct. 10,000, right? 10,000 correct. 3,000 correct. 2,000 correct. 5,000 correct. 15,000 correct. 10,000 correct. 4,000 correct. 15,000 correct. 15,000 correct. 6,000 correct. 10,000 correct. So that means our debit side, now we have calculated it and we have gotten what, 100,000. I will be 100 million, not 100,000, 100 million. So now for the credit side, let's calculate it. That means we have to get this 100 million because we are very sure that it's our total debit. So for our credit side now, we have to make sure it's 100 million. So 10,000 plus 25,000 plus 50,000 plus 10,000 plus 8,000 and plus 42,000. What did we get? 145,000. So now we just have to do the same thing. This is 10,000. This is what, 25,000, right? This is what, 10,000, 25,000. Sorry, 10,000, 25,000. Here is 5,000. I put 50,000 plus 5. So now this is supposed to be what, 5,000, not 50,000, plus what, 10,000, correct, plus what, 8,000, correct, plus what, 42,000, correct. So now what we are going to do, since we're supposed to put another thing in here, another thing, instead for you to start like, okay, maybe going back and also try and pressing replay to make sure that you get to that stage, another thing you can do is to, since for example now in this instance now you're not to put 50,000, you have to put what, 5,000 naira, right? So you just say that minus 50,000 that you put there. Do you understand? That will not be what, 95,000. There's a plus 5,000 that you had to put, you were meant to put. Now what, 100,000. So it's correct. So that means the debit side is 100,000. The credit side is also what, 100,000. So now you will now rule. That's 100 million. So put our 100, 1 2 3 1 2 3, comma comma, this 100 million, 100, 1 2 3 1 2 3, comma comma. So now this is the total, and we can see that our debit side is equal to what, our credit side. So now if there's one thing I'm to advise you in this lesson, is that we should not be too fast to conclude about our answers whenever we are preparing an account, or most at times trial balance or balance sheet. We should be sure, and we should also calculate properly. And that thing is that whenever you're calculating, tries, because I'm shooting a video so I cannot really see okay what I'm calculating, but if whenever you're calculating, try as much as possible to actually look at what you're calculating before pressing the next one. That also helps. So another thing I would like to advise us in this video is that we should try and make our work very neat. I know my work is not too neat here, but when you are, most times when you are to write an exam or professional exams, sometimes you may not really arrive at that answer or the right correct answer. But when your work is very neat, and when you present your work in an orderly manner, the person that, or the examiner that is actually reading your answers, or that is actually seeing your accounts, most at times tends to give mark for neatness. So try as much as possible. I'm not saying that you should not make sure your answers are correct. No, what I'm trying to say is that we should also try and make sure that our work is very neat, because that can actually attract a very good mark. So we're going to stop here for now. Our next topic or our next class is also going to be on trial balance, but it's going to be on another level. Yeah, another level of trial balance. So welcome to the other video on trial balance. So in this class, we're going to be treating an illustration that is way harder. Well, I use the word harder. It's not hard. It's not hard. So by God's grace, it's not hard. So let me just say it's in another level or another dimension of trial balance. So illustration 2. Mustafa Industries was having some disagreements with his company, and due to that reason, his trial balance failed to balance. So you, as a student of Accounting Mobile Academy, are expected to extract the trial balance, make some adjustments, and show the adjusted trial balance. So let me tell you something about trial balance. Sometimes the trial balance actually fail to agree. Like I told you earlier, there are some things that maybe may lead to the disagreement over the trial balance, and there are some things that will not lead, or there are some errors that will not lead. So but in this video, I'm actually going to be explaining, if for example you are given a question like this, I'm going to be explaining ways you can actually treat it without maybe imputing your own figures to make sure the trial balance gets balanced. For example, here we can see the debit side, the total is what, 25,000, and the credit side, the total is what, 15,000 naira. So it did not balance. It's already very, you know, that it's not even that it's not balanced with like 2,000, it's not balanced with like 10,000. So we have to make sure this balance, or this trial balance, actually what balance, and we're actually giving some additional informations to make sure that it balances. So what you actually require to do is to what, first of all, extract the trial balance, which is just like doing this, make some adjustments, and what, show the adjusted trial balance. So this is the additional information that was given to us concerning this question. A, prepaid rent 2,000 naira. B, closing inventory 3,000 naira lower. C, accrued wages 1,000 naira. D, additional creditors 1,000 naira. And E, loan was what, cleared. So the first one is what, prepaid rent. Prepaid rent. So whenever we hear about prepayment normally is what, it's debited because what, it's an asset. But in this process, I'm going to actually teach you 2 ways you can actually prepare this, or 2 ways we can actually make our what, adjustments. So whenever a question like this is given to you, A is what, prepaid rent. They are telling you that rent was what, paid in advance. So whenever you hear anything prepaid, just know you are going to be what, you are going to be deducting. If you hear accrued, you are going to be what, adding. I told you that anything you are using in what's normal life, you are going to do the opposite. You're going to do the complete opposite when you are preparing accounts. So this prepayment, anytime you hear prepayment, even if I think I'm going to create a video in future concerning trading profits and loss accounts. So if for example now you are to prepare an account and they say there is a prepaid rent, or there's a prepaid wage and salary, you are going to deduct that from your wage in your what, trading profits and loss account. But this is the beginner, so let me not like move forward to that. So concerning here, this trial balance, they may tell you to maybe adjust the trial balance and they give you prepaid rent. It means that you should deduct it from the rent you have. Do you understand? For example, our rent here is what, 3,000. They're telling you prepaid rent 2,000. That means your rent is supposed to be what, 1,000, right? Because you're going to deduct that 2,000 from 3,000. So when you're doing your adjustments, you're not going to put this rent in the debit side, because if you put it in the debit side, when we are trying to create the what, adjusted trial balance, we'll be having a total of what, 5,000 naira. Do you understand? So when we are doing prepaid rent, we're going to put the 2,000 naira where, the credit side and the adjusted side. I'm going to teach you how to actually do the accounts. Do we understand? So this prepaid rent, now anytime you hear prepayment, is what you're going to minus it from the account. Closing inventory, they're telling me also that the closing inventory is lower by 3,000 naira. So this closing inventory, where's our closing inventory? Our inventory that is 10,000 naira here, it's supposed to be lower by what, 3,000 naira. That means it's supposed to be what, 7,000 naira, right? So if we put it in the debit side again, we are going to be adding to our inventory, which is making it 13,000 naira. But they're telling us lower, so we're going to put it where? On the credit side. Accrued wages. Anytime you hear accrued, you should know that you're adding. Anytime you hear prepaid, you should know you're what, subtracting. So it's just like the same thing, but this one will be adding it. So if it's on the debit side, we're putting it on the debit side. Additional creditors of 1,000 naira. Our creditors normally is what, 3,000 naira. So that they're telling us that there's actually an additional creditors of what, 1,000 naira. That means the additional 1,000 naira should be put where? On the credit side. Loan was cleared. What this means is that what, this loan that is here, 5,000 naira, there is no more loan. That means they have already paid their loan. So instead of putting it on the credit side, if you put it on the credit side, it means what? You're actually going to be having 10,000 naira on the credit side. So we're going to put that 5,000 naira where on the debit side to make sure that it's what, it clears. Do we understand? So now we're actually going to be preparing an account that has what, just like how this trial balance now has 3 columns. The other one is going to be having the particulars, debit, credits in 3 sides, which is for the what, extracted trial balance, for the adjustments, and the what, adjusted trial balance. So whenever you have to create or prepare an extracted trial balance, adjust the trial balance, and also make some adjustments, this is how your trial balance is going to look like. We are first of all going to extract the trial balance, and don't be confused here. This extracted trial balance is just the exact same thing with what we have here, everything that is here. So let's just put a total 25,000 and what, 15,000. So everything that is here, debit side, is also in the credit side. This is just exactly what is here that we have brought here. So now this adjustment is what we have been given here that we're going to use to make the adjustments. But before we actually go further, I added one more thing, which is return outwards addition of 10,000. So I think last one we did, we stopped at E, so I added F for return outwards addition. So now the first one is what, prepaid rent, and I told us that anytime we hear anything about prepaid, we should know that we are going to what, deduct. So we're going to deduct from rent because the prepayment is going to what, to rent, right? So because we're going to deduct from rent, our rent is what, 3,000, and if we put the 3,000 here, we're going to be having what, 6,000 naira. So rather than putting the 3,000 here, we're going to put it where, here, because there's a deduction, right? Because I told you anything prepaid is what, minus, anything accrued is what, plus. So we're going to put in our adjustment side, we're going to put the prepayment, we're going to put it where, in the credit side of what, 2,000. Next on closing inventory is 3,000 naira lower. So this closing inventory here, this inventory that I said that is closing, it's supposed to be what, 3,000 naira lower. So if you put it in this debit side here, that means we are going to be adding 3,000 to this because this is also debited. But if we put it to the credit side, we're going to be subtracting, right? So we're going to put the 3,000 where, here. Accrued wages is 1,000 naira, and I told us that anything you hear or anytime you hear accrued, you should know that we are what, adding. So the wages and salaries, which is here, so if you put it on the debit side, it means we're adding to this one. So we're going to put in the 1,000 naira here on the debit side. So we have done this, we have done this, we have done this. Additional creditors of what, 1,000 naira. Our creditors normally is what, 3,000 naira. They're telling us that it's not 3,000 naira. There's an addition of what, 1,000 naira. That means the original creditors in total is supposed to be how much? 4,000 naira. And because it's supposed to be 4,000 naira, we'll be putting it on the credit side. So we'll be putting an additional one of what, 1,000 here. Loan was cleared. This loan that is 5,000 naira, they're telling us that it was cleared. So if you put it on the credit side, that means you're going to be adding this 5,000 naira. It's not be what, 10,000 naira. But they're telling us that there's no more loan. So by the time we put this here as on the debit side, that means this credit and debit will be cancelled because it's just like saying this minus this, which is what, 0. So return outward addition of 10,000 naira. Our return outward is 2,000 naira. They're telling us that there is an addition of what, 10,000 naira. So by the time we put this on the credit side, that means there is an addition, okay? So we'll put our 10,000 naira here. So now we have done all our adjustments. So now it's for us to prepare what the adjusted trial balance. So now let me state this. Anyone that does not need any adjustments, you'll just be taking it straight like that. For example, cash in hand, there was no adjustments. I'm so sorry, I think this slipped up a bit. There was no adjustment in cash in hand. So you are going to put it how it is on debit side, 7,000. Creditors, there is an adjustment. You can see there is credit side and there is what? Credit side. So by the time we add 3,000 plus 1,000, because when you have two credit items, you're adding. When you have a credit and debit, you are going to what? Subtract. So because you have credit and credit, you are going to say 3 plus 1 is what? 4,000 naira. So you are going to put in the 4,000 naira here on the credit side, not on the debit side, because it has a credit balance. And again, if for example you are to subtract, you are going to put it in the side that has the higher value. For example, bills payable does not have any adjustment, so I'm just going to put the 5,000 naira on the what? Credit side, 5,000. Return inward does not have any adjustment, so I'm going to just put it where? On the debit side, 3,000. Return outward has an adjustment, credit, right? So which is what? 12,000. We're going to put on the credit side of 12,000. So now wages and salaries, for example, now it's debit and debit. Okay, it's like the same thing. Wages and salaries, there is an addition. So debit and debit, we're going to put the 3,000 naira where? On the debit side. So 3,000. Inventory. Okay, now this is what I want us to pay proper attention to. Inventory is debited and the adjustment is what? Credited. So you're going to subtracting this credit from debit because this is higher, and we're going to be putting it where? On the debit side. Why? Because the debit side is higher than what? The credit side. So when we say 10,000 minus 3,000, it's going to be what? 7,000 naira, and it's going to be where? On the debit side. Rent, debit, what? Credit. Which one is higher? Debit side. So by the time you subtract it, you're going to put it on what? The debit side. Loan was cleared, so it's just like dash. You don't need to put any other thing. So now we're going to be calculating the adjustments, because is this the adjusted trial balance, because this is the one we are going to be using whenever we are to actually prepare an account. Do you understand? Like now, the extracted one that they gave us before did not balance. So they told us to actually make an adjustment or make different adjustments. And before we were able to make that, and now we moved to the word adjusted trial balance. So is this adjusted trial balance we're now going to be using? And it has the word balance. So now we'll start our calculation. We have 7,000. That's for the debit side, plus 3,000, plus 3,000, plus 7,000, plus 1,000 is what? 21,000. So we just have to look at it and make sure that everything is correct. So 7,000, 7,000, 3,000, 3,000, 3,000, 3,000, 7,000, 7,000, 1,000, 1,000. So the total is what? 21,000. So write 21,000. So for the credit side, 4,000, 4,000, plus 5,000, 5,000, plus 12,000, 12,000, 21,000. So we are getting the exact 21,000. So we have gotten this. We're going to just, you can just do this, but please use your ruler. So now we have gotten, so this is actually the new one we are going to be using to actually move to or use it to prepare any account. So if there's any word I'm going to leave with you here is that, okay, before I actually leave that word, let me try and to make it a lot easier for us. Let me try and trace the things here so that it becomes a lot easier for us. So for example, this 7,000 naira goes here. This 3,000, 1,000 goes here. This bills payable 5,000 goes here. Return inwards goes here. Return outwards goes here. Wages and salaries here. Inventory here. rent here, loan. Okay, loan, this is it. So now I just did it so that it will be a lot more easier for us whenever you want to maybe screenshot it and see it. So if there is one word I'm going to leave with you is fail. Don't ever feel that failure actually means I'm done. Do you understand? Anytime you have an opportunity to fail, because don't see it as a bad thing, see it as an opportunity. Because the more I'm not saying that we should slack and also be lazy about what we do just to fail. That's even worse. But when you fail, don't see it as a bad thing, because failure, you can just write FAIL. Failure means what? First attempt in learning. Now, I believe everyone that is here on this group actually is, how will I put it, is not a lazy person. Because for you to actually say that, okay, you saw the flyer and you want to actually learn more, you are not a lazy person. So failure, first attempt in learning. What I'm just trying to say in general is that we should not take failure as a bad thing. I have failed in a lot of areas in life, but I don't really see it as okay. It was maybe while I was in school, I was like, okay, this is actually a bad thing, or this is actually a bad thing. But the more I got wiser, I just got to understand that failure is not a bad thing. It's just your mindset. So, because when you fail, you now understand that, okay, this is how I've actually lost in this area. So I can actually work better and actually make it's better. Do we understand? So don't take failure as, okay, I failed, so that's the end. No, not at all. Not at all. Just try and strive better and strive better and better and better. And as we do that, you actually be more proud, because when people are like, share a story, you have a lot of interesting moments to say, I actually failed one time, or actually failed at this moment, so they'll actually be encouraged too. So that's one thing I actually leave, because this is actually the last class on trial balance. Our next class, we're going to be moving to, I think, elements of financial statement. I love you so much. I love you all so much. And please, if you have anything that maybe it was not clear to you, just feel free to ask me.